Rev up your engines. Okay, today we have a Toyota 4Runner. The guy bought it for $2,000 and it had 20,000 miles less when he bought it. Here's the truth about these things. And of course, the truth about this is he actually bought it from a relative who was going to sell it for $5, but he gave it to him for $2, so he practically got it for nothing. Now, he's the 4th owner, but originally it came from Texas, so probably not going to have too much rust on it. And yes, it is the 4-wheel drive. You can turn it on, you can turn it off. You got low, you got high, and then a regular automatic transmission. Now, he got lucky come from New York City to here because he got 20.5 miles a gallon. That's the best you're ever going to get with one of these. But when he's in the city, he's pouring a lot of gas in because he gets about 13. Once he only got 12. It's a big vehicle. Going to use gas. It's just the way that it is. Yeah, big tires, high clearance. I'm kind of amazed that it gets 20.5 miles a gallon on a highway. So why do people buy them? Well, 2 reasons. They're made in Japan, and 2, they can basically last forever with very little maintenance. That's the big thing behind these. They're built on an actual truck frame. They got a solid Toyota V6 engine. Now, in the 20,000 miles he's driven it, the only major thing was he replaced the radiator. Well, it was the original radiator, and they are plastic and aluminum. You gotta expect that. He changed the oil, he put new tires. You gotta expect to put tires when you buy a vehicle. That's normal wear and tear. He changed the oil and filter. No big maintenance. That's how these things can run. You don't have to put a lot of money in it, even if they got a couple 100,000 miles on them. Now, his uncle had a timing belt change because, yes, it is a rubber timing belt. They tell you to change them every 100,000 miles, but it is not an interference engine. So if you're a gambling man like to roll the dice, if it breaks, it stops running, you tow it to a guy like me, we put a new one, and away you go. It doesn't damage anything. And if you really want the truth of it, you know how many timing belts I've seen break on these? None. I've never seen one ever break. I had a guy with 250,000, he never changed the belt. It was still working. Now, this was a Texas car. You can see after a while, the bumper starts to corrode, gets a crack. You could re-chrome it. You have to take this ding out too, but that isn't the car's fault. But let's look down at the frame. Now, it's a 97. I can tell it was a Texas car because look, this frame's solid, not rotten. You're always going to get little parts that got surface rust. If you're a fanatic, you could sand it all down, get a wire brush, brush it off, undercoat it, paint it with primer. But look at this thing. You find one like this, snap it up. Because the northern ones back in 97, they got quite a bit of rust on them. While we're down here, we'll see. Here's the transfer case. We had the transfer case to run the front, and the back runs on the regular drive shaft off the transmission. It is an actual 4-wheel drive vehicle, like a real truck. While we're under here, you'll notice you don't see oil leaking anywhere. These things are well made. You can still see the original gasket still in there. It's not leaking at all. I realize the 4Runners, the early ones, if you take a look at one, hey, they were just a pickup truck that had 2 doors put on the back and they got rid of the bed. With 4-wheel drive that you can turn on and off, and compared to the modern ones, you know, they're basically gigantic SUVs now. And the big thing people have against these, they say, they ride like trucks. Well, of course they do, because they're trucks. Now, modern ones ride better because they've got all that computer technology they've been added to it. Yeah, as time goes on, you can make them ride better. But I'll tell you the truth. There's nothing that's going to last long like this. These things just keep going and going. And he's added LED lights on it. You can add whatever you want. He's planning on raising it a few inches more, which if he wants to do a little lift isn't going to hurt anything. I'm not a big fan of lifts, but, you know, let's face it. If he lives in New York City, how fast is he going to be driving? 10, 15 miles an hour? As you look inside, yeah, it's got seat cover. Of course, over the years, those seats are going to crack. That's just what happens when you got leather seats. That's why I like fabric ones. Here's the original back ones. You can see it cracks and stuff, but it's not ripped. It's still in pretty good shape. There is leg room in these things. There's lots of leg room. And look, even though it's old, it's got a sunroof. And as we look inside the trunk, look at the space. You can carry all kinds of things. You flip that down. You can carry a million things in one of these. Decent towing capability too. Still got a spare tire. Usually people have lost them by now, but you can see he's been living in New York City, so the rear end, the differential is rusted, but it's just superficial rust. If you wanted, you could clean it all off and then prime it and paint it and coat it. Again, we can see the frame's solid. This here, that's superficial rust anyways. That's the tow hitch. Toyota didn't make that. This is an added on tow hitch. And although it wasn't painted that well, That steel is still going to last for 1,000 years with that little bit of rust on this thick steel. You can paint it if you're a fanatic, but I mean, really. So we can scan tool out, hook it up, so it knows what it is. Let's do a diagnosis. We'll do a smart scan. Realize in an old car like this, you're going to get a limited amount of data. It's not like the new ones where I'll have 50 lines. No, there's just a few on these. As old as it is, there's no codes, there's no anomalies. You gotta expect that in these Toyotas. It's just so well made. What I like is a lot of it's still mechanical. Here's your four-wheel drive. You shift it in manually. It's not some computer. It's not electronics. It's a physical connection that generally can last forever. Check it out. You can change the shifting, the electronically controlled transmission itself. You can put it into power so it'll shift later and have more zoom if you're going up a hill or towing something. Let's check the back window out. Hey, look, it's a Toyota. It still works. It doesn't care how old it is. Try that on a GM or Chrysler product that's this age. It'd probably rust and fall off if it even worked. Now, for all its mileage and its age, the engine sounds good. Now you'll see. It is in New York City now, so you're seeing a lot of the stuff starting to get corrosion. But it still runs perfectly fine. Yes, believe it or not, the AC still works. The nip and densos that they use on these Toyotas are quite well made. Of course, it's running fine. You put it in gear. It's not shaking. Of course, it doesn't have a backup camera on it, and he added the Pioneer stereo, you know? We're talking about old times. But interesting enough, he put a Pioneer stereo in, but he left the controls to the original radio that Toyota put in. Here we go on the Rhode Island roads, and even though they're bumpy, hey, and as old as this thing is, it takes the bumps pretty good. It rode a lot better than that Tesla I tried out the other day. And this is a big old truck. We'll see what the 6-cylinder engine can do. Step on the gas. And it makes a lot of noise, and it does accelerate. Nothing outrageously fast, but it's a big, heavy vehicle. We're being passed by a Volkswagen. Shame of shame. But it shifts fine. It goes down the road. It's not a racing truck. It never was meant to be a racing truck. It'll get you where you're going very dependably. It's not going to strand you somewhere. And for a big, heavy truck, hey, take anything big and heavy. You kind of sail it like a boat, but it goes where you point it. And you can see the steering wheel stable, all this mileage. Front end's still in good shape. Yeah, you're gonna hear noises, rattling when you're going over bumps, but hey, it's a truck. You live with stuff like that. You know, the new ones are a lot quieter, yeah, but as good as this thing runs, it is a steal. So you wonder, why do people pay high dollar for these things, even if they have 200,000-300,000 miles? Now you know, because they can last forever. Now, you take a look underneath. This thing spent most of its life in Texas. No rust. It was a steal to buy this vehicle at any price. The only problem that you can often have on these is, let's say it spent its life in Massachusetts, in Michigan, Minnesota. You'll often see they'll be rotting away underneath, and you don't want to buy them then. You'd have to do a frame-off restoration, it would cost a fortune. But if you can find one of these that spent most of its life in Texas, and you want one, snap it up, because price the new ones. They're insanely expensive. Even if you bought one of these that had a blown engine, you could put an engine in. There's tons of engines around for these things. You can get remanufactured engines. If the frame and body's in good shape, my advice is snap it up if you're looking for a vehicle like this. And here's some bonus questions and answers. David Bayless to Scotty. I'm looking at an 06 Mercury Grand Marquis, 147K for $2,500. I'm going to look at it today. Do you think it's worth it? Okay. The grandpa car, the Grand Marquis. Those are Panther bodies, solid frames. They can run a long time. I've seen them with 250 and they're still running. Have a mechanic check it, or if you know enough, bring a scan tool. It's an 06 scan tool, will tell you a lot about it. If it runs and still shifts okay, they can be really good cars. They're not horrible on gas mileage. You can get 20-something miles a gallon on that on the highway. In town, it'll be a lot worse. One thing, if you're up north, look for rotten. If the frame is rotten or the wheel wells are all rotten, it's rusted away, don't buy it. Don't buy a rusted out car. They're not worth it. Reed Anderson said, 2012 Jeep Grand Cherokee with 78,000 miles or a 2010 4Runner with 170, same price. You know you got 100,000 more miles practically on a 4Runner. Get the 4Runner if it checks out okay. They can run and run and run. And the Jeeps, especially 2012, ones that were made when Fiat owned Chrysler, no, the quality went, I would not buy that at any price personally. The 4Runners can run forever. I had one over here the other day at 380 and still ran like a brand new vehicle. So you just still want to check them out. You can't trust anybody with a used vehicle, but if it checks out okay, get it. Ella Dodd says, hey, what is your opinion on a Chevy Cruze second generation? One of the worst cars ever made. The Chevy Cruzes. Ugh, they're terrible vehicles. Don't buy one. You're throwing your money away. The only time they're any good is, let's say you find a used one. Everybody knows they're junk, and you can get it for $800, and it still runs. What the heck? Give it a try. You know, drive it around a little. Don't put any money in it, but other than that, don't buy one. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.